All right, Alexander, let's talk about what's going on in the UK and with this passport issue. You have a lot of talk about travel passports for entering the UK. You have a lot of talk about domestic passports. And when people are watching this video, everyone understands what we mean about the passports are connected to the pandemic, to the shot, and to getting tested and all these things. In other words, I mean, they're talking about, providing people with passports so that they can enter cinemas, live events. But I can't figure out what the hell is the government's policy on this. Have they made an announcement? Are they leading one way? I think the health minister, I forgot his name, or I forgot the guy's name. He says there in no way are we going to have passports required to enter pubs, restaurants, or cinemas. That's what he said just 2-3 weeks ago. He says, no, that's not right. That goes against human rights and all that stuff. But I think the other day we had, I think it was Dominic, Raab. I'm not sure, but I think Raab said, no, we're going to have passports to enter pubs and restaurants and cinemas. I mean, this is all over the place. And it's really freaking a lot of people out. It kind of freaks me out because if it's going to happen in the UK, that you're going to have domestic passports to go to very simple events and to attend simple nights out, like just go to your local pub, then this is crazy stuff. But where is the UK government going with this, or are they going with this? Do they have any idea?
Yeah, I think we have a complete muddle and confusion on this issue. The health minister, by the way, is Matt Hancock, and you're absolutely right. He appeared to rule out completely this extremely bad and I suspect illegal idea. But of course, what is ruled out one day is then talked about again the next. We have a paradox in the UK in that on the one hand, the government has been actually extremely successful in rolling out its medication programme. I mean, it's far ahead now of Europe, and the lead is growing. And the latest data suggests that mortality statistics for the over 80s are plunging, which also suggests that this program is succeeding. So we have a very, very good, very well organized, very well managed program on that front. But the PR side of things remains as chaotic and as muddled as always, with different ministers saying different and contradictory things. And of course, the other problem is that the Labour Party, which is constantly trying to establish itself as a political mover and shaker in this pandemic, is reliably taking the most hardline and extreme position. My prediction is that as the medication programme takes hold, as we see the case count continue to fall, as spring beckons, all of these plans and talks about passports will melt away. And one of the reasons will be that I think you will also find that British courts will start to come up with decisions, if they're ever introduced, which will say that they violate people's Article 8 private life rights. So that's, I think, talk that will not crystallise. I'm not always sure, and as we've discussed several times on various programmes that we've done, one of the problems has been throughout this pandemic that in coping with it, governments in the West always seem to end up, when they're in trouble, lurching towards the default solutions, which are always authoritarian ones. But I don't think it will happen this time, if only because, as I said, the situation isn't getting worse, it's actually getting better. So I don't really understand why this should be taking place now. And it's illegal anyway, in my opinion.
Okay, that's where I want to get to, because that's where I'm having troubles with this is, if things are indeed getting better, why are they talking about this? Why are they fear-mongering about this? Here's a quote from Summit News, and it was Dominic Raab that said this. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab also suggested over the weekend that immunity certificates may even be needed to enter supermarkets, telling LBC that the idea, and I quote, hasn't been ruled out and it's under consideration. But of course, you've got to make it workable. Some major companies have also suggested that they will begin to phase in a quote, and I quote, no jab, no job. No jab, no job policy. This is troubling stuff because, we've seen a lot of protests. We've seen it in the Netherlands. We've seen in I believe, Norway and Denmark and a lot of countries, Germany. I mean, a lot of countries are starting to protest just the general sentiment of the lockdowns and what it's doing to businesses. Needless to say, it's just decimating, small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses. And we've seen court cases. We've seen in Portugal. We've seen most recently in the Netherlands and the Hague. But you've explained how these were lower level court cases, and many times they were overruled by appellate courts, and they haven't really made their way up to a Supreme Court type of level in all of these countries. But if the UK could, moves down this line that Raab is suggesting, isn't it inevitable that sooner or later you are going to get to a high court where they say no jab, no job is without a doubt a violation of human rights?
I think it's only a question of time. I'm absolutely sure that will happen. And there'll be hearings in the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court, and it won't take very long, by the way, because there will be undoubted litigation, and that is where we will go. By the way, I would also say that at this particular moment in time, the British government's popularity is rising as people sense that this is coming to an end, and as they sense also that, as they welcome the fact that the medication rollout has been a success. The one way to call all that into question would be to talk about these passports and to try to impose them on people and to imply, as some people, by the way, are doing, that this is going to be an indefinite thing. Doing that, by the way, will also make a lot of people wonder why exactly these passports are being introduced when the situation appears to be getting better, and inevitably some people are going to ask whether perhaps another entirely different agenda is being followed. In other words, using the problems that we all know about in order to increase monitoring and supervision of people. I'm choosing my words extremely carefully, but I think viewers understand what I'm saying. So if you want to feed those sort of concerns, you will do so by talking about passports. I think that Boris Johnson, who if nothing else is an exceptionally canny politician, understands that, and I think that this idea is going to melt away in the spring. But obviously it bears heeding to. And I would add, you were talking about protests that are happening all over Europe. I was reading a fascinating article just the other day. I think it was just yesterday. I think it was in the Financial Times, no less, about how small business people are now increasingly protesting to Angela Merkel herself. There's apparently a protest by people from the Mittelstand outside the Chancellery going on. It's a small, very orderly protest, but these people are important to the German economy, and criticism there is rising. There's been nothing like that here in Britain for the moment, because, as I said, people increasingly feel that things are going the right way. But if that changes, if they feel that they're being pushed into taking passports and that kind of thing, then, as I said, that mood could change very fast. And Boris Johnson may find that he has similar problems or faces the similar sort of problems to those that European governments are also facing. And besides which, I predict that he would at that stage have real problems in the courts.
Okay, final question. First question is, why would Dominic Raab be making comments like this? Obviously, he's at the highest level of Johnson's administration, and he's making comments like this on LBC. Why would he do that? Number one. And number two is, I guess, more of a, I don't know if you have a feel for it. Would the UK public, would the average person put up with a type of passport to enter their local pub? I mean, because Raab said workable. He said workable. Yeah. He put that word in there. Are such things in life even workable? Because it seems to me that that type of authoritarian control, and I would like to believe this, maybe I'm wrong and naive, but I mean, that stuff like that just to me is not workable. It is a recipe for absolute disaster to just go to your pub and have a passport. I don't know.
Two excellent questions. Let's start with the first one. Why is Dominic Raab, who is the Foreign Secretary, I mean, he's in charge of Britain's international affairs, meddling in this issue? Well, of course, last year, for a time, when Boris Johnson was ill, he was the, I won't call him the acting Prime Minister, but he was basically chairing all the cabinet committees in place of Johnson. In other words, he's the senior minister after Johnson, and it seems to me that he got a lot of publicity at that time, and he's probably annoyed with himself because he's been to some extent pushed aside by people like Hancock, and so by making these kind of comments he wants to remind people that he's around and show how important he is. But I'm afraid at the same time, when somebody who is in cabinet like Dominic Raab comes along and says, well, these things are under discussion, one has to assume that he's right, and they are, and that is extremely concerning. So even though he's not the person who's going to make the decision in the end, and he's probably got all kinds of political and personal reasons for making these comments, we can't simply discount his comments when they come from such a senior source. So that's the first thing to say. Now, is this workable? Well, Britain is an exceptionally law-abiding and orderly place. We have our edgy sides. You can find it in some of our cities. But by and large, British people obey the law. What would happen if this was introduced, I predict, is that when people go to the pub in Britain, most people go to their local pub. In many cases, the publican knows who they are. Most people who go to restaurants, for example, go to local restaurants. Again, restaurant owners tend to know who they are. If there's no sense of emergency, if there's a genuine feeling that things are getting better, and they'll simply say, well, I haven't got my passport, and will you let me in anyway? And the publican will probably say yes. I mean, that's what will happen. And the police will not enforce it, because the police have far more important and concerning things to do than worry about things like that. So I think it would be unenforceable. What it might do is that it might encourage a sort of class of informers to come along and say, well, so-and-so went to the pub and he was admitted without the passport, and you could get all kinds of things like that. But if you start going down that road, you will achieve two things. Firstly, you will take away people's respect for the law, because the fastest way to take away respect for the law is to impose restrictive and authoritarian rules that people just don't understand the point of and are going to disobey. That is one. And secondly, it is going to create disaffection and anger and division within the larger British community and make it less orderly and law-abiding than it currently is. This is a very, very bad idea, and I think we should drop it. I mean, as at the moment, Britain seems to be doing well. Certainly by comparison with European countries, it's doing very well. So let's celebrate, if you like, that, and put these very strange and bizarre and bad ideas about passports to one side. They're not needed now. They're a bad idea. They're almost certainly illegal, definitely wrong. They can only create trouble. And let's tell people like Dominic Raab, as a former British Prime Minister said, a period of silence from you would be welcome.
All right. One final question. If they do decide to go down the passport route and they do start to enforce it, which is an absolute recipe for disaster, if the High Court rules against such practices, it's enforced in the UK. Is that correct? Or can the government bypass that?
No, I don't think it would. I think in that situation, I mean, I think we still have tremendous sense of the rule of law here. If the High Court and the Court of Appeal and ultimately the Supreme Court were to say this was illegal, the British government would obey that. And if it tried to get the police and the civil service to disregard court decisions, they wouldn't do that. I mean, they simply wouldn't do that. I think in that kind of situation, you would find that the police agencies and the security agencies and the civil service and local governments would obey the law as it is administered by the court. And if the government were feckless enough and foolish enough to try and ignore the law and bypass the courts in that kind of situation, it would land itself in very serious trouble indeed. I think things are not so bad in Britain where we disregard the courts, what the courts say. So I think it would be a court decision of this nature would be obeyed. That's not, by the way, necessarily true in some other countries I can think of, including European countries that are members of the European Union. But I'm not going to embarrass them by naming them in this programme when we're talking about Britain.
Yeah, okay. I hope Boris Johnson has the right consultants here, because it sounds like this passport thing is a lose-lose on every front for him.
Absolutely, and I think he understands that. And as I said, I mean, the one thing he is, as I said, is a very, very canny politician. My goodness, I mean, Vladimir Putin of Russia has ruled out this idea. I mean, he's ruled it out. I mean, are we really going to go where Vladimir Putin said, in Britain, where Vladimir Putin says we shouldn't go because it's too authoritarian and restrictive? I am sure that Boris Johnson will take a step back. Will say to Dominic, Raab, well, look, this might be under consideration, but it's simply not going to happen. Can you please pipe down and stop talking about this, because it's an incredibly bad idea. It will lose us popularity, it will lose us votes, and it will create problems in our society which at present simply don't exist.
All right, we'll leave it there. Alexander Recurse, thank you very much. Guys, look for us on BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble. Please look for us there and follow us there. You'll find all the links in the description box down below. PayPal, Patreon, Subscribestar, and Bitcoin to help this channel out so we can continue to bring you guys the news. Look for Alexander's channel information down below. Look for my channel information down below. And go to the Duran shop and pick up some merch. Hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, all kinds of great things that helps out this channel a whole lot.
Absolutely. Amazing mugs, amazing t-shirts, brilliant sweatshirts, brilliant hats. You can see one of them here, for example. Brilliant sweatshirts, all those amazing things. And can I say, we get tremendously positive feedback from people who buy them, and you support the Duran by actually doing so. And check out our other channels, check us out on our other platforms, support us as you can. Remember to subscribe to this channel and to our other channels, and we look forward to you joining us in our next broadcast.
All right, Alexander Recurse, thank you very much. Till next time, everybody, take care.